We are back in the studio at KKCR Honolulu, KAQA Kilauea, and I am pleased to welcome to the studio our next guest, Megeso William Dennis, Kauai Mayor candidate, and be sure that I'm introducing you properly. Do I have your name fully correct?
Correct.
Okay. Beautiful. And I want to thank you for coming up here to Princeville today and joining us in the studio. We can have a relaxed chat. Let me ask you to just, for those listeners on the island of Kauai, we're broadcasting in Honolulu, who have not met you, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me today. My name is Megeso William Dennis. I'm your candidate for mayor. I'm a non-politician. A former businessman working for Business Systems Division of General Instrument Corporation. I have 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls. I have 4 grandchildren. My background is in business management, computer science, accounting and commerce, biotechnology, manufacturing, life coach, mentor, athletic coach, and consultant. And
yeah, let me just check in right there. That's a good to start with. And I want to mention your website. Would you say the URL for me, please?
Yes, it's megesoformayor.com, www.megesoformayor, F-O-R, not for, megesoformayor.com.
Okay, MEGESOFORMAYOR.com.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay, so listeners, in real time, if you want to take a look there, from what I could see, Megeso, your campaign frames itself as Kauai First, focused on local decision-making, transparent governance, cultural stewardship, fiscal oversight, food sovereignty, and community-centered county leadership. Now, some of those things sound like it's coming from my own notebook, right? Some of these are near and dear to my heart. And just transparency, you and I know each other from years ago, and I'm really happy to see you again. But does that sound about right? Did I get your some of the gist of your campaign? And maybe let me ask you then, in your own words, why are you running, and what would you like to do as mayor of Kauai?
Yeah, you got it right, except for the part about people first. It's people first governance. As you know, over the years, I've been here over 14 years. And in that time, I've seen the cultural identity of the island really change. And not necessarily for the better, that we need to really get back to the people running the government. We have too much foreign interference. So the reason I got into running for mayor was exactly that. I saw too much foreign interference. Our government, local county government being overtaken by United Nations programs. So we were forfeiting our identity, whether willingly or unwillingly or knowingly or unknowingly. This is what was happening.
Can I pause there? Because that's not you're running as an alternative candidate, and so we're hearing ideas that we don't hear all the time for a change, right? So let's unwrap that. Then, okay, the United Nations having influence at county level, okay, a lot of people may have no idea what the connection could be. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, the biggest influx I saw came in 2012, and that's when a group called ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, came to Kauai, and they met with our mayor at that time, Mayor Bernard Cavallo, and Mayor Cavallo then invited the mayors from the other islands to come over. And then the next thing I saw unraveling is we're starting to embrace some of the ideas of Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, which are not in the best interest of the island.
You're speaking of United Nations Agenda 21 and Agenda 30.
Yes.
Okay.
It was Agenda 21 at that time. And then in 2018, ICLEI took firm control of our island.
ICLEI?
Yes, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, which is an NGO of the United Nations.
Okay.
They have since changed their name to Sustainable Local Governance, I believe. So when we saw that, I saw our decision-making being forfeited. We saw our council members actually being monitored, if you would, that they were following the agenda program that was being put out. There were rewards programs associated with that to follow the program. And this was all blindsided the actual cultural, the island, the people.
Well, let me dig a little deeper there, because some people would say, well, that's by plan. That's the intention. They're intentionally following these United Nations agendas because that's what they're supposed to get on board with. That's the agenda, basically.
Right.
Basically, what is wrong with that, right?
Well,
So
what's wrong with that is we lose our independence. And for me, all these agendas, they have good programs with them. When you look at sustainability, it's a nice word, right? It's really about being self-sufficient. It's really about food independence. And with the talent and the resources and the natural resources and the people we have on this island, with our own Moku system, which is the most sophisticated and amazing system for sustainability, if you would, or self-sufficiency.
the Moku, this districting system where groups of ahupua'a are kind of grouped as
we have six
economic.
We have 6 Mokus and approximately almost 70 ahupua'as in that system. So my interpretation of that, and in talking with local people and things like that, is we don't need the UN to tell us what to do. We know how to grow food. Food grows naturally here. We have the land again, the water, the resources. We have the knowledge of the kapuna. And back with the Moku, the Kapuna Council at that time would manage the watersheds and the fisheries and all the land issues, if you would, the waste. And within that structure, they had stewards, which would be your konohiki or your alihi. And then below, you have more of the local stewards, the stewardships of the land. We can use that same concept today with taking care of our landfill problem, for example, by decentralizing that into a Moku, where we could bring our recycles and our things to a local Moku center to be handled.
So just as traditionally water would be kept within the ahupua'a and not shipped to other areas, we should think about keeping on our opala, our trash in our own local area. And it might be helpful, honestly.
It puts the kuleana back to the people.
Right.
So the people are the ones that steward the land, they have the ownership. People are the government. We're having government tell the people what to do at every turn. We have that knowledge already here.
I mean, as I'm following you, like I said, it makes a lot of sense not to ship our trash to the other side of the island, where basically out of sight, out of mind for us, not for those in Kekaha. Mm-hmm. But realistically, let's talk about being mayor. What realistically can be done with the trash situation. And I would throw in there right away also, because you mentioned the traditional ahupua'a system and the konihiki system of resource management, the water also. Our water system is, I will pause there and let you speak to that.
Well, when you were talking about the landfill, with Moku recycling, with the 6 Mokus, like I said, there are districts throughout the island, that each district would be responsible, that Moku. The county would oversee it, but again, the Konihiki Council and the Kapuna Council and the Konihikis would manage that whole system. And because it requires maintenance, so we're using micro waste management systems or micro recycling systems, decentralized. So each district is responsible for their own waste. The question is, do we do curbside pickup, or do we want the people totally involved and bring it to the recycling center? Now, we can do that if we just stuck to the district concept to the 6 Mokus throughout the island. And that takes the burden off the county. It eliminates transportation costs to the landfill, which today is spewing, I understand, about 150,000 or million gallons of water into the ocean of waste, which is under a 5-year contract. That is not good. That does not service the oceans, the reefs. So we take some of that burden off the landfill. The other thing we have to look for in the future when it comes to waste is our solar systems. Our solar systems are going to reach their life expectancy around the year 2035. That's going to cost us, because we dispose of that in Oahu. That's going to cost the taxpayers or us $50 to $70 million to dispose of that.
And just for listeners to be clear, when you say our solar systems, you're speaking of the large solar panel arrays that provide much of the energy for KIUC, our cooperative here on Kauai.
Any solar, whether it's a home solar system, whatever, it has a 25-year lifespan.
Okay, right.
And we're going to reach that approximately in 2035. So that's a disposal issue as well.
It's kind of one of those almost myths of sustainability, right? The solar power, because you're just not thinking, people are not thinking far enough into the future. A full life cycle, right? We don't have like solar panels that can be recycled into the next generation of solar panels, right?
Exactly. Well, maybe it's not solar in the future,
right?
Because technology changes so fast as we're getting into more of the quantum and the plasma technologies, and even your nuclear systems. They're not large anymore. They're small nuclear reactors that don't carry the radioactivity and the waste that you have in your larger ones. And because our electricity output is going to increase worldwide, if you would, by 30%. So we're going to have some systems that can power that. And the current solar system, I don't believe, is going to be able to sustain that properly. But again, it goes back to being independent. Okay? So I really wanted to focus on the food, because everybody is talking about food independence or food sovereignty. Because we take 90% of our foods from outside, we have to send money outside, and then when those products come back inside, we're paying inflated prices for those goods. So if we eliminate going outside for our food and produce all our food inside, we then could expand our farming. We need more farmers. We need more farms. I think I heard it tonight, somebody talk about farm housing. We need farm housing as well. And within that farming structure and the housing structure, we'd be training farmers. And then we could certify farmers and make more farmers. Then we could open up more land and grow more food to the point where we're now exporting food, not importing food.
You know, listeners, we are at KKCR Honolulu, KAQA Kilauea, speaking with Megeso William Dennis, a candidate for mayor in the county of Kauai. And I appreciate hearing new ideas. I appreciate hearing I appreciate hearing there's a different way to think about this, you know, because that's my habit. I'm constantly thinking, what about these systems? You know, how does that work? For example, bringing in consumer goods, sending out money, bringing in consumer goods. It's that we don't calculate the true cost of those consumer goods.
Exactly.
What is the cost? Could we even put a price tag on disposing of all of the plastic that comes in with our trinkets? And I think if we did, is when we might start to see a change in habits.
Exactly. Right. And we can turn that into energy, and we can turn that into workable products as well. So when we get past the food independence, not sovereignty. Independence means no outside influence. Everything is managed from within. And then we look at island independence, because really the number one thing when people talk about housing and infrastructure, it's really the economy. It's really the cost of living. So my goal is to work with the people to improve their quality of life so that they actually have money in their pockets, and our people are not leaving the island because they can't afford to be here. So to expand on the food independence, I want island independence. So those industries are things that we have to go outside to bring in, because people talk about tariffs and the increased costs there. Well, no, let's find somebody here that can fill that void. And if there isn't anybody here, let's work with Small Business Administration, create an entrepreneur, because we want people doing their passions. So let's say somebody's passion is to convert our cesspools, if you would, into micro waste management systems. Well, whatever company provides that, if you're going to come in here into our island, we want you to hire and train our people so they can take care of those systems by themselves in the Moku concept, if you would. Again, back to the 6 structures, the 6 Mokus. And so anyone that comes in, when we ask questions, is how is it going to benefit the people? Because if you're bringing industry or bringing anything into our island, if it doesn't benefit the people, I'm sorry, we don't have room for you at this time because our people are suffering, our people are hurting. And that came from COVID. And when we lost 40% of our small businesses over presumptions, assumptions, and hearsay, we had foreclosures of homes, we had suicide rises, we had people that lost their jobs because they weren't vaccinated or didn't go along with the program. So all these things destroyed the island from within. And it actually created a lot of animosity amongst the different political factions. What we're talking about is not political. I'm not a politician, okay? And I'm running as a nonpartisan. So all we care about is the best solution. I'm not, people say, well, what are your challenges or what are the problems? I don't see challenges. I see opportunities. And the opportunity is ripe right now for our people to take back control of our island from these foreign investors, from these foreign entities who are strangling us and telling us what to do at every turn. Everybody, this is about the sovereignty of all nations. And Hawaii is a sovereign nation state to begin with, and we're within another bureaucracy, if you would. But it doesn't mean we can't work together to move forward.
You know, among the topics most commonly brought into conversation for the race for council or the race for mayor here on Kauai, Native Hawaiian sovereignty is not usually one of them. It's not something that people, give voice to when, and I wonder, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, it's not, I don't like to reference it as native sovereignty because the Hawaiian people are not a native tribe. You know, they were the most educated people, and they were fine with things as they were, if you would, before everything got pushed out and people came in and took control. And they talk about their own occupation, but they forget that the United States was also occupied in 1871 when they moved from a unincorporated state, if you would, under a republic to a corporation under a democracy. So people always argue about democracy and republic. The Hawaiian Kingdom was also a republic. And republics honor the individual sovereignty, if you would, that everyone's rights. We honor our retained rights, which are our natural rights and what come from our Creator. And then you get into your constitutional rights, which protect those retained rights. So this system, like I said, in place is really built of the strength. The foundation is the Hawaiian people, is the Kanaka Maoli, is the Philippine population that came in, is the Japanese population that came in, that assimilated into the culture. But then after time, the cultural identity began to change.
And you're right, there is not a military overthrow of the Hawaiian sovereign kingdom, right? It was a business deal, right? It was the businessmen who had the military on hand do their bidding. And so when you speak to the issue of the United States essentially acting as a corporation, then it makes complete sense that the business interests occupied a sovereign kingdom.
Well, when you look at that time in the corporation, that's when we went on the central bank system. It's a central bank system. It's a debt system.
And so it's still the money that is extracting the life from the island, right?
But our assets, not to interrupt, but our assets are the people and our minerals and the food and the things that are right here. Because not that we don't care about money, all we care about is living simply. So when you build this housing, when you look into the housing, I just don't see the local population really assimilating or being comfortable in these, they call them workforce housing. I would call it stewardship, not workforce, because that sounds like enslavement to me. But they don't want to live in a box. They want a place with a lanai and a little place where they can grow a garden next to them. So I'm about communities, building up community housing with community gardens, not boxed housing, that we can, through prefab, hempcrete, tiny homes, which all these things go up to 3-bedroom homes right now. where people can live, have a little piece of garden next to them. And if they're families, they bring their ohana in. You have a ohana cottage. So we're keeping that family, that unity together. Right now, again, it's a separation because it's run by foreign entities that want us in a box, want us in a contained city. And we saw what happened in Lahaina. We don't want that happening here. We don't need containment. We need our freedom. And so my platform is faith, freedom, is faith, family, and freedom. And people first governance.
Okay. And I'm glad that we are touching into housing now, issues of just quality of life on the island. And as mayor, how could you, let me ask you this, as mayor, how would you respond to a person who says, look, I just can't make it here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Right? How do we assist Ohana who are seeing their family members leave the island because they can't afford it here anymore, right?
And unfortunately, it's systematic. The way the government is structured right now with the foreign interests is they want people to leave. Okay, that they're forcing them out, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be traffic flow, all those things. There are multiple types of housing programs. When you look at homeless, for example, you have the homeless that have addictions. So I would put them in a campus type environment with a medical facility so they could get their dignity back. We could treat the addiction, teach them a trade, and they would have housing within that campus. So to prepare them back into life, if you would. And then there's the unemployed houseless. Again, where are the jobs? Where are things here? Well, you destroyed our businesses. We want our small businesses to thrive, so they hire more employees. Well, if we're making Hawaii-made products, goods, and services and not importing all these goods, again, we're going to buy here. Our money stays here. We buy locally. So when they talk about stakeholder, shareholder, and the people, that's what it's about. But the foundation, again, is the people. So now we have unemployed houseless. Well, they could be building houses, and we could pay them a salary because we need housing.
And growing food as well, right?
And growing food. So they're having a trade. And then there's another category called employed houseless. These people have jobs, but they can't afford the rents. They can't afford the utilities. And again, that's because everything is being managed from outside by groups that aren't invested in the people. They're invested in the stakeholder. Well, I worked in the corporate environment for many years, and I know how it's structured, okay? Stakeholder, shareholder. Well, I can tell you the companies that I was involved in, successful, again, Fortune 500 company, but we work with ma and pa stores and small, medium, and large stores, that we know that we need happy employees. So if you have happy employees, you have a happy company. Now we're going to have clients or people or customers that come in. Well, you get happy employees. Now they're buying locally made products, goods, and services. So now the businesses are happy. Now they can expand. And they say, well, we don't have the workforce. Well, we build project-based learning centers and vocational learning centers to teach them a trade, to fill the needs we have on this island, which again keeps our people here. Now we have happy businesses. Now the shareholders are happy. Because the shareholders are happy, the stakeholders are now happy. But it's not working from the bottom up. It's been working from the top down. And the top right now doesn't care about the locals. They don't care about what's happening. It's systematic.
I want to give you an opportunity to turn the conversation to another area entirely.
If I didn't cover one thing, because we need kapuna housing as well, too.
Okay.
Because they need dignity in their early years.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for holding that all, and it's part of, again, I think when we talk about the office of mayor, there's some things that can be done, some things that can't be done. And I think there are some things that depends who it is, whether it can be done or not, and do you see any levers or, mechanisms, anything that's actually within the mayor's wheelhouse of things to control that could make positive change here?
And again, some of these things would affect the economy and the cost of living. Right now, the county budget is $504 million. $378 million is for wages, salaries, and benefits.
Really, county wages, salaries, and benefits.
$378 million. So that leaves $126 million for the infrastructure and housing, not counting grants or things that come in. That's not a lot of money to have left over.
No.
Maybe it should be flipped, $378 million for the people. And I'm not saying we get rid of all the people that are there, but they're not producing goods and services. What they're doing is passing paper. So the other part of that, and this is can be an area of discussion as well, is the non-governmental organizations. Now, we need non-governmental organizations, the ones that do the food banks and the ones that help us in disaster recovery and those things. But as mayor, I have to be sure that the taxpayer dollar is getting a return on its investment, if you would. So we need NGOs that are successful. We need those that are transparent, and we need those that are accountable. Then as mayor, it's my kuleana to review all these contracts to make sure there's no duplication of effort, which would lead to waste, fraud, and abuse. So right there, if there was anything there, we could take those monies and move them to people first projects. And if there's not, so be it. But that affects the economy. So there's two areas right there, the non-governmental organizations, because when the company starts a new program, they third party it out to a non-governmental organization. So we have to make sure that we're really in sync with each other. So we honor the NGOs that are doing good, but there may be some that are totally dependent on the government. And that's where the strain comes, where we can't continue to run our organization without government money. Well, you're already seeing what's happened on the federal level. They're taking monies away from the states right now for various reasons. So we have to be very fiduciary responsible for the monies that we do have.
And listeners, we have been speaking with Megeso William Dennis, candidate for mayor in the county of Kauai. I want to thank you again for coming in here. In just the minute that we have left, let's mention your campaign website one more time. That's Megeso, Megeso, FORMAYOR.com, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, MegesoForMayor.com. If you want to see some interesting ideas, that's there. What would you like to leave the listeners with?
The fourth piece of my platform is economy and cost of living, housing, and infrastructure. There is much more we could talk about with the infrastructure. And the fourth pillar is people's retained rights and their natural rights that weren't protected during COVID, that I will protect those rights to see that we're actually following our God-given rights, our unalienable rights, and our constitutional rights when we're making our decision to protect all people. Because as mayor, that is our primary kuleana, is to make sure that people have access to life, liberty, property, happiness, with health, safety, and welfare. That's our total job.
Thank you. Megeso William Dennis, mayoral candidate for Kauai County. I appreciate you coming up here so much. We're going to go to the top of the hour, play a couple spots, and you should be able to scoot out the gate before they lock it. If you go now, and we're hoping that Jeremy Hall is in the green room. If you send him in on your way by, we're going to do a live on-air switcheroo here. So thank you again.
And thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure.